There's a lot of romanticism about buying a business and leaving corporate, but what's it really like? Can you capitalize on your corporate knowledge and build a business? Elise Heslop is in today. She's done it. We're going to talk about how she did it. We're going to talk about what she would advise other owners to think about before they contemplate doing it. And we might even get into some territory about what she would do differently next time. So big welcome in, Elise, to the Owner to Owner podcast.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Thanks for asking me on.
It's fantastic you took taking the time to come on and have a chat. We really appreciate it. Your professional arc is 4 parts. You were in a senior corporate role. You took a sabbatical. You came back from that sabbatical, started a business, which we'll talk about a little bit later. You sold that business and now you're back in corporate. So that's a full 360.
It is.
Was there a through line from where you were to where you are today?
I think probably where I started being, when I was at uni, I always had a creative side, but really kind of fell into my course at uni with the idea of just doing something that I enjoyed. And I think the marketing side of it has probably been that through line. Thinking about consumer behaviour, psychology, that's definitely been something that's interested me, and I've probably applied it to all of my roles along that journey, that not so linear path that you point out. It's kind of funny hearing it that way. It's not something I've really thought of until you articulated it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think about an arc that's not linear, but I don't know how many people actually do it. This is what's so fascinating about what we're going to chat about today. Was there a trigger when you were in your corporate role back 7, 8, 10 years ago that really that challenged you to say, I've got to do something on my own? And was it tied up with this sabbatical that you took?
Yeah, I don't think there was anything specific when I was in my role, making me wonder what life was like outside of, the corporate palace. But I think our personal journey and, where my husband and I kind of found ourselves in, probably on one of those holidays within your 4 weeks of leave, drinking too many margaritas, going, oh, what else is there to life? Like, is this it? Is this the thing that we're looking forward to every year and watch our kids grow up, doing this? That was probably the catalyst for the change. We were both very much aligned. My mum was born in Italy, and it's always been something that I've been very connected to. I studied over there through uni and did languages like an offshoot to my commerce degree. So, we wanted to gift that or give that to our kids and give them that experience and get them to see how life is in other parts of the world. So, yeah, it was probably while stepping outside of the day-to-day and having a little bit more time and thought around, what are the things that I really value in my life? Does the corporate kind of structure enable me to have those things? That's where I really got the opportunity to think about other possibilities and, step outside of that kind of box and the expectations of who I am and the role I have and the title and all that stuff. It didn't feel as important.
Yeah.
Yeah, got me thinking about, what else I could do. There were a few different things that happened. It was kind of a confluence of a few different scenarios, and one of them was boredom, probably, in the middle of winter,
Margarita,
yeah. Not being able to get outside much while we were living overseas. And the other was probably seeing how different it was to go from like a house with a backyard and that typical, the Australian dream here, to living in a 2-bedroom flat and being very happy with less space and thinking about using space differently and how that could maybe imprint over to the Australian market as an idea.
Yeah. So, there was a confluence. Yeah, there was a family connection and then questioning about what do I want to spend my time doing.
Yep.
How long did you spend in Italy on this sabbatical? Because did you resign and then say, wherever the wind takes me?
A little bit, yes. That was the intention. And, the company that I was working at the time, they were great. They said, we'll accept your resignation, but we want to know that there's always a door open if you want to come back, which I was very lucky to have that as an opportunity if I needed to take it or wanted to. And yeah, the idea was, so we were away for 12 months. that was the limit to how long we could go away for.
Well, so he also, your husband resigned from his role?
He actually, so he owns a small business as well. So, and he's been running it for a lot longer than I have. So he was fortunate to have a business partner that, they could run it. He could run it partly remotely, but it enabled him a little bit more freedom. He went back a couple of times to Melbourne to make sure everything was still going okay. But his intention was to kind of step back and then step back in, do like the admin-y stuff while he was away, and then come back.
But there was a higher purpose. You both and everyone in the family wanted to get away and have this experience that you knew you'd really regret it if you didn't do it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, the kids were really young. My youngest was 4 when we left, and my elder, well, not much older, they're pretty close together. My eldest was like 5.5. So it just felt like the right age. They were small enough to carry, and big enough to be able to kind of, go on hikes and do the stuff that we wanted to do. And, they were starting kinder and school over there as well. So that really helped us break into the community and get to know some awesome people.
Yeah, that idea of living there, not being a tourist.
Yeah.
There's a distinction, isn't there, between becoming part of the village or the community and travelling for 2 weeks and in out.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, I felt like after 12 months there, we really felt like we were part of the place. It was a small town. So, and that we chose that intentionally. We didn't want to feel like we were just moving to another city. And yeah, we've still got connections and friends over there. And the boys who are much older now, they're really close. They're like, they've got more extra families, which is
That's really cool. And you talked about learning to live in smaller spaces and have less, the great Australian dream versus this more, whatever the European lifestyle is and was. Is that what triggered or planted the seed for the birth of Plyroom, your business?
Yeah, I think it was actually. It did plant the seed. I think I, like a lot of us, had been kind of going on this pathway of, what I thought was, the way we should be living, and, kids living in the same room until a certain age, and then they want their own space. So you renovate and you do the things. And I guess, we were fortunate enough to be able to have those choices and be able to make those decisions. But then, seeing it completely differently where, your home isn't where you do all the things. Like, you're living in your community, you're out in the street, you're doing the walk after dinner, you're going out on the weekends. It just started, it was that kind of catalyst, like you say, for maybe using space differently. There's something in that, and maybe I'm not the only one that thinks like that.
I agree. What is different is you've taken that big leap. I think a lot of people do think about it. There are people, I think I'm fascinated by the what I call the other circular economy, which is people doing the lap around Australia and taking the kids, doing homeschooling. And we saw a gig, a band in Point Lonsdale last weekend, a couple been on the road for 3 years, and it's all about, they've left their careers, well, their jobs, their roles, careers, to focus on their music. But it just meeting more and more people who are combining, they're getting out of, it's not a holiday, it's an adventure or an immersion into something. But mostly you've got to still figure out how to make $1. Yeah. At certain ages. So it's combining of those adventure and also pragmatically, like with your husband in a business, stayed in the business, just did it differently. And if you force yourself or something so important for the family group, then you find a way. Yeah.
And I think, it feels a little bit hypocritical to talk about it this way, but, industries and the capitalist kind of structure, like we're trained to think that, about the things that we should have or what life should be like or what we want. And, you're constantly fed examples of things that might appeal to you. And I guess it sounds a bit cheeky coming from someone that, has been in marketing their whole career. But the question of like, how much do you really need? And more isn't necessarily better. It's about, really finding what turns you on and kind of what keeps that light alive.
Yeah.
And it's not always the same thing all the time. It changes.
No,
Yeah.
and it does, and it's really hard to pick that thing as well. Like I think there's so much pressure on kids coming out of school to go that pathway.
Yeah.
Take some time off and go explore. So do the sabbatical. I would call it a sabbatical, but do that thing. Can you tell us a little bit so the listeners will get a sense of what Plyroom was, and then we'll talk a little bit about your journey over 7 years?
Yep. So Plyroom was I guess you'd call it a furniture business, and it started off, I guess, as an import distribution business. I was working with some companies over in Italy, architects and manufacturers in their own right that, wanted to see where this kind of opportunity could go. They'd had demand in the Australian market, but just couldn't facilitate getting it over to Australia. So it was a case of good timing, and they had a need and saw an opportunity as well. And they had adventurous spirits as well. They were kind of open-minded. And so that's where it started. And I guess probably the focus initially was on children's furniture, and the name Plyroom was all about. It was a play on words with playroom and, ply and being flexible and adaptable and all those things. Again, kind of the marketer taking herself a bit too seriously with that stuff. Yeah. And then it kind of adapted and evolved. Importing was great, but it did present its own challenges. And I wanted to start designing my own products and manufacturing in Australia and supporting, Australian manufacturing and local production and that kind of thing. So it progressed to that. We had a website, and so I guess you call it an e-com business, because predominantly, like, I think 80% of our volume came from the online store. But then we also had a showroom. We did like a concept store, and then we were also selling to trade architects and interior designers and that kind of thing. So we did a lot of different things. But the idea was that it was a values-based business. It was about, I don't know, like buying once and buying well, buying things that you can change or that have multiple uses or purposes, always kind of using timber as the foundation. And it went from there.
Yeah, I think you sounded like you bonded with the manufacturers in Italy because they were about the same kind of values and approach to things.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I do remember we did some work together, and it just reminded me then call it an SME, a small business, you had 3 or 4 parts of the business. I remember, there was e-commerce and there was design. It was, the thing, these small businesses can be absolute beasts because you're adapting, you want to do hustle and make things work. And so you add this and you do that and come in and look at it with an objective perspective, and it's not straightforward. There are quite a few moving parts, and really you're talking about a small business with different business units. So.
Yeah, and I think that was a challenge when the time came. We'll probably get to this later, but it felt a bit like an octopus with a lot of tentacles and arms and moving parts, and I think I'd built it and shaped it to fit what I wanted to do and try and explore. But when you try and pass that on as an imprint to someone else, it can be pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, it can. And that's where you need a lot of work to say this is how it all fits together. That's how that works. That's how that bit works. But we will come back to that. With for you had 7 years end to end in the
7 years in the showroom warehouse space, and then like 3 years before that kind of running it smaller. So probably 10 years in total.
Okay. So what looking back, what was the first really uncomfortable thing that happened to you? You'd left corporate, you'd gone on sabbatical, you started a business. What was the first big event, uncomfortable event that you can remember, and how did it make you feel? Like, God, what have I got myself into? Or what can I draw on from my past experience to tackle this problem?
Yeah, it's funny. There are so many small events that kind of have the same impact. Probably the first big one was a logistical one, really. It was around, importing and understanding all of the Incoterms and what Ex Works means and who's liable for the freight when it gets damaged after it's left the warehouse. Just trying to navigate that whole scenario, and then having things go wrong once it's actually left Italy. So really kind of trying to get up to speed with how does this affect my business? How does, am I insured for this stuff? Who's liable? Someone getting a bit creative with a forklift at the port, what is that? Like, how does that impact, all of the orders that we've got waiting to kind of go out? And then having to kind of deal with that downstream effect of talking to customers who have been waiting and really excited about something special that they've invested their money in, and letting them down because it's late because mistakes get made.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest, or the first one that really comes to mind.
And a lot of that stuff is outside of your control. That span of control is only so long. But yeah, you've got customers wanting it, and by this time you're a founder, you're a business owner, you've started, and you're getting stuff coming at you every day. So, it's really, that's the beginning of being an owner, isn't it? And how you deal with that one, because you get that solved and there'll be something tomorrow or the day after.
Yeah.
Did you start to feel like a business? Did it help make you feel like a real business owner?
Look, I think it did in a way. I think all the stumbling blocks and things along the way, it's like that thing where, I don't know, I've been reading, I don't know, I dabble with running. I say I'm not a runner, but sometimes I'll go for a jog, and my sons will laugh at me because I'm, terrible. But I shouldn't say I'm not a runner, because I do run. And it's the same with running your business. It's like, yeah, I'm a founder because I did it and I'm doing it. It's just that change in mentality, I suppose. And it's like, all right, well, what do we do? The royal we being
you look
me.
Around. Hang on, it's back to me.
Exactly. That's right. Yep.
Was that the sort of like an evolution of, for you, that it is about how I react, respond, how I deal with this?
Yeah, definitely. And I think also one of the biggest challenges when you don't have a partner in business, or it's not a group of people, and I know that the double-edged sword, each has their own benefit and downside. But yeah, it's kind of down to you, and yeah, like you say, how you deal with it. And really, there's no option. Like, you kind of just have to get through the obstacle. Otherwise, what's the alternative?
Well, I wonder if that is the point where you're firmly going to embrace being the owner and responsible for everything, as contrasted with being in a role, paid employee, where I think there's more opportunity to share there's other worse interpretations of that, where it's blame shifting and whatever. But did you kind of reflect on that at that time, or around those times where you thought, well, it'd be a bit easy if I could be back wherever you were?
I don't think I ever wanted to go back to where I was, but I remember at one point I was at a crossroads with the business. I wasn't sure which way to take it. I created this niche and I was really focused in the kids' furniture space, but I wanted to do other things and I wanted to branch out, and I just really wanted someone to give me the answer. And I remember myself saying that. I went to a workshop, and I went to the workshop with the intention of walking away with the answers. And, I think that's what we all want sometimes when we do that or go to those things. But yeah, it's, and it's down to you ultimately. And there's no wrong answer either, because no one's kind of watching you with a big stick judging it.
But there was for you personally, it was, I've got to do whatever these challenges were. I can't find the answer internally. It is about me, but I'm going to have to go to this event or go do some training to find the answer. That's a big step up, isn't it? From where you could say, well, it's somebody else's issue. It is clearly mine. And I'm going to do, if I don't have the necessary skill base or experience or connections, I'm going to find them, or I have to find them.
Yeah, and I do think that's that's one of the good things about being the founder, I suppose, is that you have the opportunity to branch out and have those conversations and kind of just figure it out your own way. There's a good freedom that comes with that, just problem solving, getting in the muck, and knowing that someone else isn't going to kind of come and give you the answer or solve it for you. Yeah.
No, and probably a feeling of it. I mean, beyond the people that your family, nobody else will even know what you're going through because you're there on your own. And your immediate family might, but then there's like the care factor or the awareness factor is just so low.
Yeah, that's right. That's freedom as well, in a way.
Yeah, it is. And we're not, we're not trying to, that's your reality and the reality of many others who have taken that big, bold step, but it's having that internal belief and openness to getting other advice and seeking answers. That's all part of being a founder or a business owner, because the likelihood of it all just going to plan is pretty.
Yeah, you can plan for the things that have happened before, but you don't know necessarily what's around the corner. And sometimes you can get all the advice that you like, but you have to trust and listen to your gut. And that's something that I learned as well. Like sometimes I didn't, and it came back to bite me.
Can you talk about an example of one of those?
Yeah, when particularly with the exit of the business.
Yeah.
When things didn't feel right, they felt a bit off. I probably should have called it earlier, and I didn't. So I let it play out. Cost me, time, money, bit of heartache along the way.
Yeah.
Stress. Yeah. Stress.
Yeah. Did your at that point, were there things that you'd learnt or been exposed to in corporate that really might have given you a leg up as a small business owner founder? And were there other learned behaviours that were counterproductive?
Yeah, I think the things that gave me a leg up, probably knowing that I couldn't do it all by myself, ultimately. I mean, the first year or two was very much a case of me trying to do all the things, being in a storage facility, moving boxes that weighed 45 kilos and, were 2 meters tall and all, like, it was a sight. I can tell you, realizing slowly that, you can't do all the things if you want to move forward, and recognizing that before I got myself in too much of a mess. So that was probably one thing I got from corporate. I think also, keeping your networks, not networks as in, the networking sense of the word, but like staying connected with people. That was something that I did miss running my own business. I found that, it got quite lonely being the one that was making the calls, and I wanted to have really honest conversations with other business owners. So, I had my brother who runs his own business, and we've had some pretty great chats over the years, my husband as well, and then people within the industry and further afield. I guess the thing that made it or was a bit counterproductive was this kind of training in a corporate environment that you're not the one that makes all the decisions. So you need to get sign off and approval from a number of different individuals and counterparts. So I guess I was always looking for that validation that it was the right decision before I, pivoted or made the change. And I'd kind of workshop my ideas a lot. And ultimately, I was probably a little bit overzealous in that.
Yeah.
I could have just gone with what my gut was telling me.
Yeah. Which is kind of have to practice that a bit, I think.
Yeah.
Trusting gut, and if you're going to be you're going to survive in small business, you're going to have to keep doing that. There's that loneliness thing comes up all the time, and so you did talk with other business owners.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do anything formal, business owner groups, or did you have mentors, or was it what you described?
I had a coach, I suppose, someone that I could talk to about this stuff, and she gave me some practical, like it was kind of a practical relationship where she would kind of help me with keeping me accountable with action items and things that I could do to kind of work through some of the challenges I was facing. So there was definitely her, and she was great. In terms of, business networking, I'd always kind of just lurked on the edge. And I didn't dive in. That is something that I probably regret, because it could have been could have saved me in a few dark days.
Yeah. Look, there's plenty of opportunities around, but I think the ones that seem to keep resonating with other owners is the experience or the value they get talking to other business owners. Sometimes you might even talk to someone else in the industry, a potential competitor, but But the experiences seem to be pretty common across all small businesses at the different stages. So
Yeah.
But there's this imperative every day to do things, and you're trading off your time, and you got to get stuff done. And so with Plyroom, can you just talk about what was the trigger for you to say, I think it's time to move on from this business?
Yeah, I think when the lack of certainty around where I could take it superseded, like the fear of failure superseded just listening to the coach of the soccer team, the Scottish soccer team that got led into the World Cup, and that amazing victory. And it was a whole idea that the players went in not with the fear of failure, but the anticipation of success. And I think it was when the fear of failure kind of overtook the anticipation of success, and it wasn't something that kind of switched off or on. It was like over a period of time, that kind of feeling of not really sure how much more I can do here. What else is there for me to give? I felt at my capacity, and I kind of felt like we were stuck. The business and I was stuck.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so that stretch of running the business, you didn't have any more sabbaticals, but you maybe had a few trips to Italy, did you, for work?
For work.
But like in terms of getting away like you did, at the beginning.
No, I couldn't get away.
Constant.
I felt like I couldn't. I felt every holiday I had my laptop and was working. And I think that was probably, part of it is my own kind of cross to bear, in that I did that. I didn't feel like I could switch off, and I probably could have, really. Yeah, and that's where the idea of the lifestyle business, it's like, it sounds so good on paper, but it really depends on if you're setting the boundaries and you are running it like a lifestyle business, or if it just becomes your everything.
Yeah. Fueled by all of the stuff that you hear about growing. If you're not growing, standing still, and you want to 10x this and want to add this in and supercharge that, look at this questioning. I've had a couple of guests on talking about exit planning. Exit planning is an extremely good thing to do. Its potential limitation is it's usually defined by an exit at the end of this process. And it's got to be, if you want to do that, you absolutely want to be out, you go do that. But it can also be other exits. It can be an exit where the owner kind of pulls the business back to something that's really like a lifestyle business, or much more manageable, or you bring in a partner, or you bring in a manager. I mean, there are other endpoints or end games and it's because it does seem very binary, where you're in there, you're busy, you want to do something else because you're just done with this. But those businesses can be different beasts. And like with your husband taking some time out, putting, really forcing yourself to, how else can I continue to do both, but having a life and having a business, but do it differently in different ratios?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I don't think it was something I thought about enough. I thought about exit as in, I fantasized about closing the doors and I drafted the email to say, after 10 years, we're closing our doors. Thank you, everybody. We're bowing out.
Have you still got that email, by the way?
Probably somewhere. Yeah, I reckon I do.
You should frame that.
Yeah, it was very much that case. It's like, you close the doors or you sell.
Yeah.
The idea of, interestingly, I think I did the scale down, get it to a point where it was a lifestyle business after I decided that I was out, after the failed sales the sales of the business kind of didn't go according to plan. I was like, I don't think I've got it in me to go another round or to keep it going.
So you had you went fair way down the path with a buyer, unraveled
it twice.
Yeah.
So the first time, I think we spoke, it was quite a few years ago, and you gave me some really great advice and got me thinking about how to do it, and I guess the pitfalls of, the model in the Australian small business market. And I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if I'm expert enough in this space or a good enough negotiator to be the one to champion my own business and go out and pitch to my competitors. So I'm going to go down the broker route. I went down the broker route, great person, really got on well with this guy. And then for whatever reason, he left the business and then I was given someone else. We found a buyer, seemed really good, but then COVID hit and she got cold feet. So then we were back in kind of full sprint mode because COVID, our business was one of the lucky ones where COVID actually got things really moving beyond the initial, shit, we're not going to have anything for 6 months because people in Italy are dropping dead, keeping some perspective. Then, so that kind of continued for a while, for a few more years, and I kind of got that stuck feeling again. And I'm like, well, the business is actually in a really good place profit-wise. I feel like we've kind of got our octopus arms working. We know what to dial up, what to dial down. We've got our processes. We've spent the time. I mean, that's the other thing that comes from corporate, like especially GE. You get your processes right and you refine. So everyone knew what they were doing. And so went out to kind of market again in the broker sphere and got to, yes, we're in. We just need to sign the contract of sale and it'll all be done. So I went away on holiday thinking, oh my gosh, it's happening, and came back and these people had just vanished. So I don't really know what happened there. It was just one of those really unfortunate situations where, I should have, I saw a little bit, like felt uneasy at certain points in time and I didn't read it loud enough. So yeah, that's what happened.
What did you have to go on at that point? Was it like a trail of emails and calls to say, we want to do this, we'll get a contract?
Yeah, so we had lawyers talking to lawyers.
So you were starting to form and create a contract.
Yep, we had agreement in principle. We had emails, with the intended offer and, but the contract of sale hadn't been signed and there was just stalling going on and it just fell over. So
yeah, it's brutal because the sale's gone and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it is, the sale's gone. So you got to brush yourself off and go back to the business again because, it's as damaging and as stressful as it is, there's a business to continue. And it's mighty, mighty hard.
Yeah. And I think that was the point at which I, carried on for a few more months. And I just thought, I think it's time to wrap it up. I can't see where I'm going to take this. So I scaled back, made some decisions around that. Didn't renew the lease of our warehouse, closed down the import side of the business. And it was all a local manufacturer, made to order. I was working really closely with my manufacturer who was just down the road, which was great. And we talked about them packaging product rather than me doing it and my team doing it. So it was all kind of just housed on site for them and came to an agreement in that way. And yeah, it slowly kind of transitioned to them kind of managing all of the logistics, them being there for courier pickups and drop-offs and stuff. So it kind of went from this octopus to just a one-trick pony in a way. It was a lot simpler.
Yeah, and they bought it, so they became the natural buyer, really, didn't they? Yep. Because you were so interlinked, and they could see inside the business. And I'm assuming they had a manufacturing capability, and with your business, got this brand and customer base and designs and
exactly.
E-commerce. But was it? Are you still doing any e-commerce at that?
Yeah, so we were still selling through the website and through trade, interior designers, and they also had a really good network because they also have an architecture arm of their business. They're very, very good at what they do. So like you say, it was a natural fit.
You hinted at it early. The model for buying and selling businesses is pretty crude. And advertising and waiting and hoping that there's the right buyer out there. But a lot of sales happen like this, call it off market, but it's where there's already an understanding of what the respective businesses do well or where they're lacking. So it might become a manufacturing alliance or joint venture to start with, or a distribution thing and services. And then it's like, really, you're kind of just getting closer all the time to becoming part of that business.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, the dating model approach, like with you put your profile out there and it's a numbers game versus relationships through introductions or knowing the brother of your best friend or whatever it is. That's where the trust comes, and you can see under the hood and appreciate. And I think that what you just said with that brokerage model, there is a bit of I did think that I could articulate the value of the brand and the customer base because I saw it. And the way that industry works, I suppose, is that it has to be about showing the multiplier and validating the multiplier based on the P&L and the balance sheet. And, sometimes you can't really measure brand and loyalty and all of those things. And I think that was one key learning for me.
Yeah. I think, it's another one of the limitations that you got to have a formula for valuing your business, but it doesn't account for the fact that not every buyer will view the business the same because they've got a different set of challenges, and it can be worth more or less than that formula. I'm okay, you start with a formula, a bit of a baseline, you get some market data, but when you test the market thoroughly, you will often see that different buyers will, if you don't just post the price and say, look, it's for sale for $1 million. I mean, as soon as you do that, unless it's an incredibly compelling business, which doesn't happen very often, there might be a bit of competitive tension that goes up. More often it's like, well, it's a start point. Let's, work our way down and all the games come. But I had Craig West from Succession Plus on last week, and we were talking about this very thing. And it's really very important to thoroughly prepare so that you can almost, you know your business, but you can almost see how it fits inside of other businesses, competitors or industry players. And that's another layer of thinking about your business, is how it fits in there, because that's when the formula will be different, or the value. Yeah,
you're right. I think it's just dawned on me that, the packaging up of the business and the marketing of the business is really critical, and knowing your target market of who could potentially want it. And the scattergun approach is what I employed, and it didn't work. Surprise, surprise.
Doesn't work. Oh, well, it works very occasionally.
Yeah.
So you've sold that business. You've gone back to corporate. 12 months. How long have you been back?
About 18 months now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you just want to tell us a little bit about the role you're in now and what you're doing, because it is directly related to small businesses, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that. What's the company name? What do you do?
So the company's called Early Pay, and I run the marketing team here. So we're basically Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. We've been around in various iterations for about 25 years now, coming up to our 25-year anniversary. We're very much about working capital and cash flow for small businesses. Unlike your kind of typical bank model that relies on property security, it's very much looking at your balance sheet and your performance of your debtors, basically your customers, your business customers, and using that as the way to fund your growth, or using the assets that you have in your business, like equipment, to raise capital for new opportunities, or dealing with things when things get hard.
Excellent. Yeah, so it really goes to the heart of looking beyond the big four and the traditional way of doing things, to saying you do have value in your business. So it's proof you're doing okay when you got some debtors and some plant and equipment, but you can leverage them more easily now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something, I didn't really know about it as an option when I was running my business, but it's very much an option for B2B businesses. And it's something that, unlike, your typical, your loan amount, that's your kind of your one and done and you've got to pay it down, you've got the opportunity to, rather than getting just one-off injection of cash, you can kind of ebb and flow as your business grows, and you've got those kind of cash flow cycles in your business that are pretty natural.
Yeah. So you and with all the analytics around, from zero management accounting software and e-commerce software, you can really, if you want to, you can really dive deeply into a business beyond what happened in last year's financial statements.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big part of it. So what tell us what the website is for Early Pay?
Yeah, so it's earlypay.com.au, and come have a chat with us direct, or if you've got a commercial broker, always have a chat with them as well.
Okay, yeah, good. I'm glad we got that in, because it's really it does also, it reminds me of that you're back working with other small businesses, so that's pretty cool. Did you feel like a different kind of senior executive in bringing that experience? Is that part of the role you took and why you ended up where you ended up?
Yeah, I think
Bringing
so.
that small business experience, which is so rich.
I was fortunate to have a business that saw that value. I didn't quite know where I fitted after Plyroom, and moving on from Plyroom, and took quite a bit of time to figure out, marketing is still very much what I love and what I do, but what's the fit, and where are my skills best employed? I think, being able to bring that experience, but also see the human side of business, because business is just, it's still people at the end of the day. That's how we're kind of building our approach to marketing as well.
Yeah, well, working capital for small business is one of the big challenges. It's okay if you want to borrow 100 million, but if you want to borrow $500,000, it's challenging.
Yeah, and also, just thinking about your assets differently. Doesn't always need to be property, and that's the thing that's really intrinsic to the Australian market, and it's not like that in Europe or the US. You've got assets in your debtors ledger, your accounts receivable, you've got assets in your equipment or whatever. That's the stuff I never really thought about or knew. Yeah, I always thought that borrowing meant that if you need to borrow, something's not working. And that's where I would get those sticking points of, I feel like we're growing, but I don't know how to make it happen. So that was probably just more of a learning for me.
Close the loop for other corporate professionals who are sitting around. Maybe they're in Italy, maybe somewhere else, and there's something eating away at them. What would your advice be to them about launching or buying an established small business?
I think something I heard the other day, it's like, just start to get started. Doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to do the course or all the things to be ready. It doesn't all have to be perfect. You can iterate, fine. That's kind of the fun bit. That's where the freedom is, and enjoy that, because it's kind of like playing in business. You just don't want to ignore the lessons. Make sure that you really listen hard to the lessons. I think also find your business tribe. So find your people, and that might change over time. That's something that's, mental health in small business small business is tough. So I think it's important to think about how you're going to look after yourself when you don't have the water cooler chat or, the virtual Christmas parties or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And one thing that really, I guess, talks to my experience, I kind of came in to a new industry, learnt all the things along the way. I think there's value in maybe learning from a business that's already been doing what they do rather than starting from scratch. But don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle. Like, you can spend so much time and energy looking sideways and, thinking that what they're doing is better, but you just don't know what's going on in anyone else's business. You kind of need to find your niche and stick to it. Yeah.
Back yourself.
Back yourself.
Trust your instinct. I think you've mentioned that a few times, and it was there. You just got to coax it out and be confident in that. Yeah. It's a bit of a loaded question. At some point later on, would you consider another business? You've got exposure to small business through the family already, so maybe you've got the right mix.
I think we'll get the kids through school first, but never say never. I think if I was going to go down a small business path again, it would probably be in a service-based industry rather than something that's really kind of product and legit, like big bulky goods, warehousing, all the things. Yeah, try something different, but also in an area that I'm familiar with. I think it's key.
Yeah, because it really, you started with a passion and an interest, but it wasn't really a domain area of expertise, and not without its complexity, manufacturing and importing and building a website and all that stuff. It's a lot easier now, but building a website, that is, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of things are a lot easier, but so they're also more complex. So trying to work out the right way to go and who to use or how to do it is that brings up its own challenges, which, when I started, we had Instagram and it was all based on chronological stuff, and Meta hadn't messed with algorithms and monetized the crap out of it. So it's a very different landscape now.
Yeah, indeed.
Mm.
All right. Two final questions. Sabbaticals, yes, a good idea for everybody or for most people?
Yeah, I would say so. Doesn't have to be. You don't have to pack up your life and move to Italy for a year. It can obviously be a lot smaller and simpler and easier, I think. But yeah, just getting the headspace, getting out of the bubble, thinking about what you really value and appreciate. I can't see any downside to that, really.
Yeah, I hear you and I agree with you. Final question. If you were plucked to head up the Australian Federal Small Business Department, what would your top few priorities be for building a stable, resilient, successful SME economy?
It's one thing to think, oh, it's broken. It's another thing to think, how would you fix it, isn't it? I think a few things that, we were reading or talking the other day about the Business Council of Australia, the ratings for each state and how they are to have a small business. And unfortunately, I think Victoria came last. And I think it comes down to like regulation and taxes and the invisible taxes. I think standardizing that across the country would be a really good move. I don't see why they're different for different states. I can understand maybe different approaches to different industries, but yeah, I think standardize and use best practice, use what's working to drive productivity and, confidence in the market. That would be one thing. Yeah, and simplifying it. I think, if I may be so bold as to suggest a lower company tax rate for companies, not just companies under 50 million, but maybe even lower for the ones that are under 10 million, because it's a very different landscape. And I think you'll find that the majority of businesses are in that much smaller bracket.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, I think, evening out the playing field with taxes and simplifying that. And probably, because I'm biased, but I think really supporting the industries that we want to see more of in Australia. Manufacturing, it's so hard to do manufacturing in Australia. Thinking about how we actually support those businesses, whether it's, I don't know, if they're lucky enough to be able to buy their properties, land tax concessions or something, so they're not penalised for going out and having a go and growing as well.
Yeah. Well, COVID and our capacity for manufacturing was exposed big time. So yeah, and I see been a reduction in funding at CSIRO, and I think manufacturing, etc., was one of the areas that got most heavily hit. I could be wrong, but yeah, it's not healthy.
No.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Elise. That was what it's like to do what a lot of people think about, and you've gone full circle. So wish you well in your new role, 18 months in, and thanks so much for sharing openly with us today. It's been greatly appreciated.
No, of course. Thanks for having me on and getting me to think back and reflect on quite a ride.
Quite a ride, yeah. All right, Elise, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Look forward to keeping in touch.
Likewise. See ya.